Thank you for tuning in to today's ProcessMiner University podcast.
A podcast series designed to educate listeners on the latest technology trends and shaping Industry 4.0 transformations in manufacturing. I'm Tom Tulloch and I'm your host for today's podcast. With me, our guest speaker is none other than Doug Woods. Doug is president of the Association for Manufacturing Technology, better known as AMT. Doug has led AMT for over a decade now. And prior to joining the association, he held executive positions at many well-known manufacturing companies. A lifelong leader in manufacturing technology, Doug's passion for the industry began as an apprentice toolmaker and progressed upwards as he held positions in manufacturing engineering, quality management, operations, product development, and sales. Today's topic of discussion is getting more value and ROI from your factory data. But before we begin, first of all, Doug, welcome, and thank you for being our guest on the podcast.
Happy to be here, Tom. It's always fun when someone asks me to talk about manufacturing, so no worries. Whatever you've got, whatever you're wondering about, I'm sure I can chime in.
Terrific. Well, before we dive into this meaty topic, first a little bit about you. I understand that in your free time, you're an accomplished ultra runner. So before we get to the hard stuff, tell us a little bit about your history in this extreme off-roading that you do, and share a story everyone might be interested in.
Yeah, well, most people, I tell any story that has to do with ultra running, they just go, "What are you, nuts?" And that seems to be par for the course for anyone that seems to be silly enough to want to go run 100 miles at altitude in the mountains. But yeah, that's what I do for fun is train and do 100-mile races. And I've been doing it for, probably a couple decades now. So it's really interesting, something fun to go do. And it's kind of a combination of just pushing what you can do without typically having a chance of killing yourself, which is something I try not to do on a regular basis. But puts a little adventure in, keeps you in good shape, gets you outside. You meet a lot of fun people. And the nice thing about doing an ultra is everyone's out there in their shorts and t-shirt and backpacks. You can't tell the CEOs from the software developers, from the person actually taking care of your lawn. Everyone's the same. And at the end of the day, it's just kind of fun to be out there with a different group of people adventuring.
Wow, fantastic. Well, as a fellow runner, the one I'm most curious about is how many shoes do you go through in a year?
I try to keep a constant rotation of 4, depending on what the road conditions are. So yeah, my wife isn't real keen on the amount of money I spend at the sports stores. I tend to always have the latest. I'm also looking to shave ounces. So if I've got a 4.2 ounce waterproof, windproof jacket and someone comes out with a 3.9, I got to buy it. So yeah, I go through a lot of equipment.
Well, good for you. Why don't we hop in and talk a little bit about technology and some of the things that you're seeing out there. Obviously, as president of AMT, you know better than most what folks are doing to really leverage the data that they have access to in order to improve operations, streamline what it is they're manufacturing. In your experience, where are you seeing manufacturers really get the most value out of their data and really the highest rate of return, if you will?
Yeah, no, big question to kind of cover, but I mean, it really does get to the point of what we're really trying to do these days in a lot of our manufacturing businesses. And I like to equate it a little bit to, trying to, assimilate, what we're doing in manufacturing to, let's say, like the mining industry. And the mining industry, if you think about it, they know what it is they want to mine. So they want, they're mining for silver, they're mining for lithium, they're mining for some rare earths. They know what they want to mine. They figure out where they want to mine it. They figure out what equipment they want to use to mine whatever it is they're getting out of soil. And then they actually know how they're going to deploy what they've mined. And if you translate that over to manufacturing, we've got the capital equipment. We've got really sharp people, we're doing different things, but the disconnect really gets to be to some extent what to do with what you get. So, mining, they get it. I get the lithium, I know what I want to go do with it. And I think what we've been able to do in the manufacturing space over the years due to the low cost of sensors, due to open standards like MT Connect creating interoperability capabilities, we're actually making it easier to get the data, right? And now with the cloud, processing and storing it, that's not the problem. So the trick really gets to be, what do I do with the data? How do I take the data to make a difference? And that's where really getting involved in helping them better understand, hey, what could you do? Is it simple as OEE? Is it just utilization? Is it uptime? And as you start to build, start with something simple and work your way up. Start with, hey, I just want to figure out how to save some cost, or I just want to figure out something's going to drive my sales a little bit. Take one little project, and I'm going to start working my way up the ladder and start to leverage, how do I actually translate data into value? I think that's the disconnect we have to help the marketplace do.
Wow, that was fantastic. So if I were a manufacturer that is brand new to all of this and then just beginning my digital journey into making better use of my data, what advice would you have for me in terms of where to begin and how much time should be spent up front to developing a strategy?
I think that is, really pretty key. The thing that, most people, and I used to run a small shop, years ago, and, you got so many things going on. You're trying to take care of getting orders out. You're trying to get new orders in. You're trying to take care of HR issues. I mean, you get all kinds of things going on. And so it can be kind of just overwhelming to figure out, how do I walk out to all that equipment on the floor and figure out how it's going to do something? And again, that's where, don't walk out there to all the equipment on the floor and try to go, I'm going to connect everything I'm going to install 5G in my plant, and I'm going to figure out how to, just solve all these problems at one time. I think the way to go is really taking a look, and there's a lot of really good information online. I mean, there's almost a YouTube for everything these days for figuring it out. There's a lot of content online from people who have been involved. AMT, we've run something, the IMTS Spark, it's our IMTS network. We have on-demand information. We've interviewed people from Oak Ridge National Labs. We've interviewed people from, different technology support companies, just to go, hey, what kind of things are out there? How would you do it? How would I process it? Where do I start? What equipment do I use? What software is available? Who do I talk to? Some of that stuff's already packaged and out there to go use. But the real trick is, if you just start to take a look at what's the one area that's your biggest pain point in your plant. Just pick that one machine or that one process, pick one individual one, and then start real simple. Like if you start, trying to just have a good way of collecting information, if MT Connect isn't already on the piece of equipment, it's free, it's open. You can go to GitHub, download information you go use. You need something just to commonize the data. And so one of the really tricky things, and you guys know you're in a similar business of going, if I have a bunch of disparate data, it really makes it hard comparing machine 1, machine 2, machine 3. Is it date stamped? Is it time stamped? Do I know, is this common? If I say temperature, are you talking Celsius or is it Fahrenheit? So there's a lot of things. If you could harmonize and commonize the data, which we've done a really bad job in manufacturing over the decades, but if you could do that, now you can turn it over to those companies that really have the great information, the great products to leverage that data, turn it into productivity. So I say start simple. If you're not sure where to start, you can go online. You can take a look, tons of things that are available on YouTube, different channels. Making Chips guys have a really cool podcast that gets into some of these things as well. There's a great, just the fact that they're listening to this. You have anyone that's listening to this has got to be the progressive group of people already. Hey, I'm looking for some tips and ideas. Leverage those in small blocks, and don't be afraid to ask for more information. You can talk to your local, whether it be SME, ASME, NTMA, National Tooling Machining Association, AMT. There's a lot of non-for-profits, even your local MEP. There's a lot of groups that are out there just to help manufacturers solve the problem.
Wow, what great advice, and thanks for sharing with our listeners. One of the things that I think many companies make the mistake of is, look, we got to use all our data to our advantage. It's important that we have a good grasp on, every piece of machinery, every part of the production line that generates data. And I always say, no, it's the right data, processed at the right time and enhanced for the right people in order for them to better do their jobs. So to that end, everybody out there is at sort of a different stage in their technology maturity and what they're looking to accomplish, particularly in terms of those early returns on investment. If you're late to the game here and you're just beginning your digital transformation and just beginning to collect good data, is it too late? Have the early adopters created enough space between them and their competitors that it's too late to catch up, in your opinion? Or should people who have not invested or are not looking at some sort of digital strategy get on board and be able to catch up, in your opinion?
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely the case of you can thank all those people that did a lot of the hard work before you. You absolutely didn't miss the ship or miss the train, depending on your mode of transportation. You're at the right time in the right place. I think I'm not sure in a couple of years I would say the same thing anymore, because it's getting somewhat ubiquitous now to find low-cost ways to implement this technology that might not have been so true 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, where some of the solutions were very disparate. And so connecting one part of the solution, data acquisition, maybe with a sensor, maybe with an open standard, maybe with a processing tool of some kind, it was really difficult to figure out how those pieces came together. Now, a lot of that's getting much more narrowed down. You can really see where the major players are in the marketplace. You can see what's happening. The cost to add sensors to equipment is incredibly cheap. The technology is really advanced. I mean, you can get Arduino or Raspberry Pi. You can get really cheap processing capability. You can do it right to the edge. You can get crazy and go to, crazy is not even crazy anymore. You can go to NVIDIA and get their kind of edge computing capability that's in the terabyte and super speed. And you could do it for less than $1,000. I mean, it's crazy what you can get now. So you didn't miss it. You're right at the right time that the opportunities are still there. You've got to be smart. It's not like I'll buy A, B, or C, pick it, and everything's done. It's not. We're not at that point yet. But all the tools to pick options A, B, or C, all of those different pieces are out there. And again, at cost points that are very affordable. And so what I'd be saying to people that aren't in the game yet is to, again, just start to take a look at what are you trying to do. Take a look at some things that go on from, if Gardner puts out, not Gartner, this is Gardner Publishing, they put out something that's top shops. And so top shops are, every year they do a study of what are some of the best contract manufacturers doing in the US. And so if you're a medium to small size company, hey, what makes those guys and gals different than me? What are they doing? And in many cases, you'll see what types of technology they're implementing into their facility and start going, hey, I might start doing something similar in that. You can go to Gartner if you want to take a look at what are those leading edge technologies that actually the major investments are in, because those, you want to make sure the ones that are already kind of moved into, they're getting more into the mainstream. You don't need to be on the leading edge if you're small to medium size. Save that for the Fortune 100s that are happy to go do that because they need to carve out a big piece of the market. And they need market share in order to actually make their shareholders happy. You can actually see what they're doing by watching some of the stuff that you'd see trending with the Gartner sides of the technology. So I think, if you've been waiting, I wouldn't wait a whole lot longer, and I'd start doing something. Again, start with the smallest level in your facility. Pick the simplest thing to go do. You can go get a really simple Bluetooth connected measurement device. You could do a really simple vibration sensor and put it on, even a bandsaw, and start to figure out what's going on inside your plant. I mean, energy saving, you can do from very simple things, connecting up just to see what your energy utilization is, and then figuring out, can you do something different with your power supply? There are all kinds of things you can do that save you money, that will drive productivity, and aren't going to cost you a lot of money.
Fantastic advice, for sure. I've seen that Top Shop survey data. It's certainly worth looking into, without question. So my next question is really more about the large manufacturers. So, the large manufacturers, of course, love to control their own technology in many cases, and will often want to develop internally. And that's not always something that smaller manufacturers can afford, or even mid-sized manufacturers have the deep pockets or the resources to do. So you're sort of forced in between this sort of build versus buy. You mentioned it's really cheap to buy. Is there an advantage to one approach over the other? I think that we've spoken with many large manufacturers who say, yeah, we're building it inside. We're interested in some of the work of the vendors that we've met with, but we're going to wait and see what our data scientists can do. It's tough to get data scientists in manufacturing in the first place, but share your opinions about the two different approaches and what you think folks ought to be thinking in terms of both approaches.
Yeah, I mean, if I throw out just a few names that I think most people from an industry standpoint would know. So if I threw out Fanuc, if I threw out Siemens, and I threw out, let's just throw another one in to kind of make the case, Salesforce. All three of those companies, which are in the billion dollar categories, right, are actually people who have proprietary systems. That's part of what's carved out their multi-billion dollar place in the market, along with all their other products and services. All of those, if they had their druthers, if they could actually garner a larger and larger part of the market, would stay proprietary and proprietary only. All those three I just mentioned all work with open standards, okay? Because they've realized the pie is so much bigger than what they'll ever be able to do from a proprietary standpoint. And many of the new startups want to move at a level of speed and tenacity that sometimes those companies can't keep equal pace. And so they've become fairly smart and aggressive, going, hey, look, it better to play where we can have certain things that would be proprietary because it is our IP and it's our differentiating factor. But we need to put APs out there. We need to have the ability to be able to have open standards that can connect in, that we can communicate with and work so that we can broaden the overall capability. So, when we were looking at putting a new software system in, one of the first questions we said, do you work with open standards? And they said, no, we didn't even want to listen to them. Salesforce was one that was like, no, they could do that. Same thing, Fanuc, same thing, Siemens. So I would suggest whoever you're working with at whatever level, you just want to make sure the company you're working with gives you that ability, because the world is changing so fast in that software space that if you don't have the ability to extend the platform you're working together on, you're then limiting your platform you're working on, and you don't know what you don't know about what's going to be created next year, the year after, and the year after that. So it really pays dividends to work with people that have a kernel of their proprietary IP and something unique that's solving a problem somebody else can't do that fits your need, and then making sure that as they grow or the market grows, because you can hang open standards off of it, you can expand your space and play in the market.
Wow, that was a mouthful, but a couple key points in there that I think are really worthy of considering. So, when you think of the big closed loop systems, domain experience is really critical in terms of, what direction you go with. And also sort of you've got your folks that are in agile environment and folks that are in more of a waterfall environment. Obviously, you have to take into consideration what the speed to market is with both approaches. So good advice. Thank you. Last question for you, Doug. I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball here for a minute. Technology is very rapidly evolving in our industry. The ability to deploy technology inexpensively, rapidly. Where do you see technology changing our industry 3, 4, 5 years from now? How much different do manufacturing operations look as technology gets adopted over the years?
Yeah, I think you can start to see what the models might look like when you look at perhaps what Uber has done in the industry that they're in, and shifting kind of how capital equipment is used, what you do when you can open up to bring a service, what you need, when you need it, where you need it, the way you want it, which is the manufacturing utopia. And start to go, okay, when I came up, and you mentioned in my profile, I started out as an apprentice toolmaker. I mean, not a lot of people are going to go do that. And I don't think actually you need to do that. There's certain things you do need to learn and understand from a technology standpoint. I would also point to STEM. I think STEM should be STEAM. Because yes, you're still going to need to know something about engineering and technology, science, but you don't have to know quite as much as you used to know, because with generative design and AI, it kind of changes what you need to know to be able to operate the equipment. The UI, UX with equipment is going to dramatically change. I think that in many cases, it's going to be different people who actually own the equipment, and people like the Xometry, Fictive, Proto Labs, creating a manufacturing as a service solution are changing the paradigm of how you look at what could be done with manufacturing. When you start to translate tens of thousands of transactions and harmonize them, come up with grouping different technologies, figure out tool sets that could make certain sets of parts, figure out how to do it faster, better. And so you see a world where, hey, maybe you don't have to go through the same kind of engineering program, the same type of tool maker or mold maker program, that you can kind of be more application engineering or product development oriented, because you can leverage the generative design. You can leverage better UI, UX capability with the equipment. You walk up to almost any additive machine, you don't need 5 years of experience to know how to run it. You take your file, an STL is created of it, puts the slices into the machine, and it actually makes the thing that you wanted. With a lot of other equipment, it's not that simple, but it will be. It will be very similar to that. So it changes that for the art, the creative and the innovative side is going to be really important. And you're going to bring an entire new group of people into manufacturing, almost like the maker movement, of bringing people in that were never part of it, but they found it really easy to use cheap and expensive additive machines. They got excited about the industry. Couple that with the SPACs, the things that are going on with investment with the additive companies, huge amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars of valuation, $1 billion of valuations. R&D is being accelerated in our space. You combine those two things together, I think the future of manufacturing is not only exciting, it really looks very cool, and we leverage humans to do much neater things than being the operator at the equipment. They're going to be the leverager of the technology.
Doug, what a fantastic interview. Thank you for being willing to be a guest speaker on this episode of ProcessMiner University. We appreciate your insights and look forward to seeing you in the future.
Great. Thanks for having me, Tom.